You are watching the New American Media.
You are listening to The Unhappy Hour Sports Radio Show on the newamericanmedia.com.
Hello, everybody. We are back in real time. That only took seconds, but on YouTube time, if you're finding us after the fact, it's a whole new episode. We are joined with NBA scout, lifelong Cleveland sports fan, Zak Baris. You can find him on Twitter at ZBARIS, Z Baris. He is a NBA scout, lifelong Cleveland sports fan, and he joins us during the NBA festivities. And as a Cavaliers fan, both of us, this is one of the exciting points of the past 2 years is when we get to try to improve. So we're recapping the picks. We just went through top picks 1 through 10, and we're going to pick it up from there because, you know, starting with 10, you know, we have Austin Rivers, and we're going to move right past him to Portland at number 11, Myers Leonard. Myers Leonard. Heard that name a lot out of Illinois. What is that player? Who is Portland getting out of Illinois?
My opinion from what I've seen, Chris Mim.
Meaning? Maybe
a little better version of Chris Mim. Exactly what you got from the Cavaliers. Maybe a guy who can put up 8 and 5 a game, 8 and 7, 6 and 8 a game. You know, he's not going to put. You know, the guy will never be an all-star center. I can tell you that right now. He's never going to be putting up 18 and 10 a game. You know, you pretty much know what you're getting from Myers Leonard. But Portland needs a center. You know, so they went out and grabbed him. He was the highest ranked on their board. So I mean, I think they were really hoping Drummond would have fell to them, but he didn't. So, you know, they went and took Myers Leonard.
And they liked Myers Leonard better than Tyler Zeller, and they previously picked up the injured Buckeye, the oft-injured Buckeye. Who is he a free agent now over with Portland? Is he gone officially?
Greg Oden is a free agent, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, I guess a lot of failed expectations there and a lot of injury problems, so they do draft a center. Houston at 12. You know, they were making a lot of moves and in a lot of talk about maybe packaging some picks to go to the Magic and make a Dwight Howard trade.
I think they tried very hard, and I just don't think they were able to. I think that's why they were starting to turn over their whole roster. But I like the Jeremy Lamb pick for them at 12. I really do. I think he's another guy who could, you know, he did well with Kemba Walker, but this year he struggled, you know, and he called out Andre Drummond the other day. But you know, he called it Drummond for his lack of hustle and his lack of play. But I think Jeremy Lamb could be a very successful NBA player. You know, just at the beginning of the season, he was projected, you know, to be a top 5 pick. You know, obviously that didn't pan out, but you know, he's still a very solid player. I like Jeremy Lamb a lot.
Okay, so you're a fan of Jeremy Lamb, and then Phoenix at 13, Kendall Marshall, another name we heard a lot of coming out of North Carolina.
Looks like it's going to be a Steve Nash replacement, a guy who's an incredible passer. Kendall Marshall is not a good shooter. He doesn't tend to he's not a shoot first point guard. He's a pass first point guard. And they're still running the same system basically on Alvin Gentry as they did under D'Antoni. So look for them to try to spread the floor, and I think they're going to lose Nash in free agency this year. So, you know, I think they made a decent pick there. I think he was a solid selection.
Where do you see Nash going? Don't say it, please. Don't say it.
Brooklyn.
Oh, okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I see him going up. I could either see him in Dallas, going back to Dallas, but I think Dallas could fade off very fast. Now, you know, Dirk Nowitzki had a bad year. You know, he averaged. They got beat by the Thunder pretty badly. I could see Nash possibly winding up in Dallas. I could see him in Brooklyn, and I mean, I just don't see him with the Knicks because of the Jeremy Lin set there. But, you know, even Chicago is a possibility. I mean, it just depends whether Nash is going to go for a ring or he's going to go for the money.
Okay, so you don't see him taking his talents to.
No.
Okay, good.
No, I don't. I don't see it right now.
Okay, good.
But I'm not saying it could change, but I think he's intrigued with the fact that I think there's a possibility he goes and plays with Darren Williams in Brooklyn. Okay. I think it's an intriguing possibility for him, and I think and don't forget he lives in Soho in the off season.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
So it could make a lot of sense just on both ends because his family's in New York.
All right, I'm all right with that. I've always been a Nash fan, so I would be happy to continue being a Nash fan. But if he goes to the Forbidden Land, then obviously I would have to.
No, I don't think he's going to take his talents south. I don't think you have to worry about that.
Okay, moving.
I mean, it's always a possibility, but I wouldn't think it's the highest on his.
Well, Milwaukee's highest priority was picking up John Henson out of North Carolina. Tell us how he's going to fit in with the Bucks.
I think Milwaukee needed a wing more than they needed John Henson. I think Henson is, he's 6'10", he doesn't do anything great, but, you know, he's a little weak for, you know, he has a small frame for being 6'10 and a half. But, you know, I don't love the pick. I don't hate the pick. It's one of those that's just, you know, he's not going to, you know, I don't see the guy with having all-star potential. I think he should have stayed in school for another year, kind of like his teammate James McAdoo did. But, you know, I mean, he could be decent, but I don't see much. I don't see much coming out of, you know, John Henson.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. By the way, you know, I don't know off the top of my head. How does this work with the rookies, you know, when they come in as far as pay scale? I know the NFL totally redid their collective bargaining agreement, kind of locking in.
Well, so did the NBA did it too. I believe the first pick, it gets sizably smaller. You know, the NBA pick, the number one pick is guaranteed he's going to make about $6 million this year, and then it keeps decreasing a little bit with each pick. Okay. You know, I believe it's the 15th pick will make somewhere around 1.4, 1.5 mil a year. You know.
Well, to a kid, you know, a kid like John Henson who might have needed it, you know, might have benefited strongly from an extra year in college. He also could have injured himself in a way or something. You know, you never know what could happen. So I mean, it's hard to leave $1.5 million sitting on the table when you're 20. You know.
I mean, that's not saying Henson won't be a good player, but I just don't see him being more than an average player in the NBA.
Fair enough. Well, moving past Henson then, you got Maurice Harkless out of St. John's going to Philadelphia 76ers. What do we got there?
I like the Harkless pick. You know, he's a good wing player. You know, I think pairing him up, I'm going to just mention this, pairing him up with Arnett Moultrie, I think they got two really good picks there, you know, in both of those guys. I think Philadelphia needs guys who can score the ball. Lou Williams, who was actually their sixth man, was their leading scorer this year. They need guys who can put the ball in the basket, and they just went and drafted two of them who could.
And I'll tell you what,
I think Philadelphia did a nice job.
Philadelphia, they played the Celtics really tough. I know the Celtics were more banged up then, but that same Celtics team went on and played really tough against the Heat. I mean, they put the Heat back up against the wall, and thanks for nothing, Boston, again. I swear, Boston sports has just brutalized me as a sports fan, whether it's the Patriots with Belichick or what was that, a few years ago when the Indians versus the Red Sox to go to the World Series, and we had a 3-1 lead, and we just totally choked and collapsed. These Boston teams, I don't know, but, I mean, they were really tough. They were playing the Heat very tough this year. The Sixers, rather. They were playing them real tough, but, the scoring was not there.
Yeah, I agree.
Houston, Royce White, number 16.
From Iowa State. I believe Royce White, I'm trying to think what program Royce White used to be at. He was, I believe he was kicked out and then he went to Iowa State, but he had no problems. He had no problems with Iowa State. Never was in trouble at the law over there. So, I like the Royce White pick. I was expecting him to go a little bit later, but it was not a bad pick. I do like Royce White. I think he's a good player. He's another good wing. Solid wing.
And so Tyler
I honestly thought the Cavaliers would be interested in taking him at 24.
Oh, okay.
Originally. I had Royce White originally on my board going to the Cavs at 24.
See, there were a couple players I was looking at. I was looking at Sullinger, wondering if they were going to move up a few. I was looking at Fab Melo, seeing who was going to bounce down there. Obviously, they went up to get Tyler Zeller. Compare Tyler Zeller, how you see him playing out in the league. I mean, we're used to seeing a 7-foot white center in a Cleveland Cavaliers uniform, but he's going to be a different player than Zydrunas Ilgauskas. What are we going to expect out of Tyler? Like, player-wise, how are we going to see his game develop? What is he?
Tyler Zeller, he produced. He was great at the college level, always produced. But the thing with Tyler Zeller, he has smaller arms. He doesn't have that large wingspan, that everybody always talks about the wingspan, which will hurt him on the rebounding end. But like I said, he's going to give you solid minutes. He runs the floor. He has great fundamentals. He's a do-everything player. He's a hustler. I think Zeller has potential. I don't think he's a superstar. I don't think he's ever an all-star. That's not to say, I love his brother Cody down at Indiana. I think he's going to be the prominent Zeller in the family. I loved Cody Zeller coming into the draft this year. Big fan of his, but he decided to stay in school for another year.
Prominent Zeller in the family.
I do like Tyler Zeller. I think he is a solid center, and I think the Cavaliers made a nice move getting there. And eventually, like I said, the Cavaliers need to add solid front court depth, especially with Varejao being injured last year and not having a true center on the roster. I think was a major problem, which cost them a lot of games. Having to play games with Samardo Samuels, who's 6'8", 6'8.5", and with Semi Erden, at center, it was rough. It was rough watching some of those games last year. I can tell you that right now. Having Zeller in there will help ease Andy's minutes a little bit, and it allows Tristan to be able to play in position a little bit more. I like the pick.
Yeah, and something can be said when you play at a program like University of North Carolina. I mean, you're going to come out of that well-coached and well-rounded. He might not be, a superstar caliber player that's going to be multiple MVP in the league, but you're getting a guy, 22 years of age. He's played in that system for several years. He's been coached up correctly. Like you said, his fundamentals. He'll likely learn the system quickly. He'll likely be in the right spot at the right time. He'll likely take up space as a 7-footer. If you can get solid production versus having an obvious liability, I mean, that would be a big increase, a big upgrade.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
exactly. That's what they need. They needed someone with some kind of upside, that's not named Semi or Den, to be able to fill in. And I think the Cavaliers, I think they got a good pick there. I do like the pick because they got someone who's going to produce, and I think he's less of a risk than Myers Leonard. I do.
We're talking with Zak Baris, NBA scout. Zak Baris. You can find him on Twitter at ZBARIS. Lifelong Cleveland sports fan. We got Houston at 18. Terrence Jones coming out of Kentucky.
Love the pick. I had Jones as a lottery pick. I really like Terrence Jones. Again, I think Houston had a really good draft. I think Terrence Jones, the problem is he a 3 or a 4? He tends to think of himself as a 3. I think of him as more of a 4. He is a 4. He's not a 3, but, he sees himself as a 3. But, I really liked him. I think he really showed up during the end. There were always questions about his motives and everything. Was he a high-driven player? Does he take plays off? Those were always questions. But from what I saw in the NCAA tournament, that was the guy that didn't take any plays off and was all over the court. He was a hustler, and I think I like the Terrence Jones pick. I've been high on Terrence Jones now for 2 years.
And something again. I don't love the noise. I swear I've tried to turn it off a couple of times here, but whatever. We're just gonna have to roll with it. At least we know things are happening in the draft. As far as getting quality character guys, I don't know these people personally, but you look at a situation where Justin Blackman, switching sports here for a second, in the NFL, I mean, there were red flags with this player coming out of college, and then turns out he's drafted with Jacksonville, and then, very shortly after, the man's arrested with DUI. I mean, I don't think he even signed his contract yet, and he's getting arrested.
No.
And so character guys that have their heads screwed on straight.
Terrence Jones never had any off the court issues. I want to make sure that he never had any off court issues. What I was saying with Terrence Jones though is was he always there? Is he always hustling? Those were the questions with Terrence Jones. It wasn't. He absolutely had zero off the court problems.
Oh, that's fair enough. Let me say, it's going to when you start hearing people say, "Oh, Michael Gilchrist, he's got a great motor." Oh, the intangibles are there, the it factor versus, well, is he going to be saying, practice, man? We're talking about practice. Is it going to be one of those work ethic issues versus, high character, high motor, high energy, putting extra work in versus, hey, man, I'm a millionaire, I'm kicking it, whatever, person that just doesn't care, I think that's important.
I'm one of the few, but I had Terrence Jones higher on my board than John Henson. That's me, me personally, from watching, film and watching them play. I like Jones better. I've been a big Terrence Jones fan now for about, for almost 2 years. I've really liked the guy.
Well, Zach, you never know. One of these years you might be running a draft. Who knows?
I hope.
Well, let's see what Orlando's doing. They got a youngster down there, a 30-year-old, isn't it? Running their team. Trying to figure out what they're going to do with Dwight Howard and getting rid of half their, all the front office.
I do not envy anyone in Orlando's front office right now. Let's just put it that way. It's a very, very tough.
It has to be.
I feel bad for Orlando's front office. You have Dwight Howard, who's been incredibly difficult.
Yep.
Down there. I mean, yeah, Dwight's a fantastic player, but he just shouldn't have opted in for that final year. He should have.
That was
they
really
were all
strange.
set to trade him, and then he opts in. Basically, I think to please the fan base and the show. Because I really don't think he had his mind made up at the time, and now I think he really wants out of Orlando. I think the only way to be able to keep him down there would be to acquire a guy like Josh Smith, who's his best friend. And I think that's about it. But I think Dwight has his sights set on Brooklyn.
Do you think Kyrie Irving was hoping the kid I mean, obviously he was hoping that the Cavs could work
that out.
Oh,
of course. I think he was really hoping, I think he was hoping for Kid Gilchrist. I mean, don't forget they're best friends and they're high school teammates.
Yeah, and they won a state
championship. What more could you ask for? And the guys have already meshed together. They played, like I said, they were at St. Patrick's in New Jersey. They played together for a few years already. They know each other, what they're going to do on the floor. It's like just the instincts, of each other. And I think, like I said, I originally, when all the first mocks came out, I had Kid Gilchrist going to number 2 to Charlotte. When it started changing, it almost shocked me. I said, I originally looked at it, I go, I can't see Kid Gilchrist falling past 2. When I looked at it, I go, he's got the second highest potential in the draft. I never saw him falling past 2. And then it was all the members of the media, started reporting Thomas Robinson too. And, I kind of ran with that. I wish I wouldn't have. I wish I would have just stuck to my guns and said Kid Gilchrist was going 2 all along, like I had pictured. But it just didn't happen. But personally, I think that the Cavaliers could have gotten him at 4 and had Charlotte taking Beal at 2 because Washington would have taken Thomas Robinson. It would have shaken things up in the first round for sure. But I think that's what would have happened. I think Charlotte blew its opportunity, to be able to gain a couple extra picks.
Question
which they definitely needed.
Yeah, well, and they were entertaining the offers. Turns out they didn't go for it. But my question is this, because you look at it just seems like in this new league you have to pair up a tandem or a trio or something. I'm just wondering if this might come back to bite the Cavs. If you're trying to keep Kyrie on a long-term contract, if he's got his
I don't think it hurts them at all. I think if Chris Grant felt that Dion Waiters is the best player available at that pick, you have to take it and you have to run with it. And if the Cavaliers are going to be in a system where they're going to be running the floor, Dion Waiters is a good fit for the system.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not a huge Dion Waiters fan. I just haven't seen enough of him. That might be why. But don't forget he did not start a game at Syracuse. He was a 6th man for a reason behind system. It may have just been maturity, but the question does arise though. Is he ready to produce? Like I said, he has no problem getting to the basket. He's a slasher. He can get to the basket, but he just isn't a great shooter at this point. I felt the Cavaliers could have gone out and used a shooter like Harrison Barnes. But maybe they think Waiters has much higher potential than him. Like I'm saying right now, I do not think Dion Waiters has Dwayne Wade potential. I've seen that this week. I don't agree with that. I think he could be a good player, but I just don't see any Dwayne Wade in him. I just don't see enough Dwayne Wade in him. Dwayne Wade is a special player. He's a top 5. He was a top 5 player in the NBA or still close to it. And I just don't see Waiters being a top 5 player in the NBA.
Okay, so let's talk about Orlando's pick, Andrew Nicholson, coming out of St. Bonaventure at 19, trying to figure out what to do with that franchise as it's in that horrible 2-year purgatory stage that Cleveland just went through. What do you like? What's going on with this pick?
I would have taken Solinger at 19 if I were them. I like Nicholson, but, I think it would have been cool. I think it would have just been a good situation to match Solinger up, with Dwight Howard for a year. Because it's so hard to tell. I don't know what Orlando's intentions are right now. That's the problem is no one knows what they're going to do. Are they going to go and keep Dwight for the year and then let him walk in free agency? Or are they going to go and trade him now and start restructuring the roster right now? Those are the big questions, and I just don't know the answer to them. So it's hard to even give an evaluation on the Andrew Nicholson pick.
Well, you need to have a direction.
And plus St. Bonnie's, they come from a small conference. They're not always facing elite competition, so it's hard to get a read because these guys aren't always on TV. I didn't evaluate a lot of film on Andrew Nicholson, so I haven't seen him play a lot. So I honestly, I've seen him play a fair amount, but I can't give a true read on him, on what to think, because it's also, I just don't know what to think, with the Magic, what they're doing right now. It's so hard to determine, who's going to be on their roster in 3 to 4 weeks once free agency starts, and if they make a trade, it's so hard to tell.
It's such a mess. I don't envy that situation, having lived through it.
No, I can tell you right now, that's got to be one of the toughest front offices to work in.
Yeah. Because,
if they could somehow get Dwight to stay, they're going to be an elite team. But the problem is, they have cap problems. They have Turkoglu signed to a long deal. You have Jameer Nelson who hasn't performed. That's the thing is, they're a lot like, they're basically a poor man's version of the Cavaliers were when they had LeBron. Just stuck with bad contracts, and they have literally no one that they can go out and trade. They don't have any tradable pieces on the roster. At least the Cavs have some tradable pieces, and some flexibility. The problem is the Magic lack any sort of flexibility, and that, that's what's going to be scary because they're not going to get equal value for Dwight. If they bring back Brooke Lopez and Chris Humphreys, You're not bringing back any.
No,
you're still not bringing back anywhere close.
But they should have learned that. They should have learned that from the Cavaliers. I mean, you're not going to get equal value back for multiple All-Star and Defensive Player of the Year, MVP.
No, but
you're not going to get
Denver
it back.
Denver made a fantastic trade trading Carmelo. One, I don't think Carmelo was going to ever win a championship in Denver, anyways, and nor do I think he'll ever win one with the Knicks.
He said his time's coming soon.
But I mean, I don't see it. I don't see him being able to beat LeBron. LeBron's a much better player than he is, and he's on a much better team with much better teammates than Carmelo. I think Jeremy Lin's a good player, but I think Carmelo's very selfish, and LeBron's not. I just don't see him being able to beat LeBron ever. He really never has. So, and it's a whole other topic, but. I definitely.
Well, no, it's a good. We can stay there because you're talking about the Denver trade, and we're going to round out this next 10.
But Denver got as fair value as they could. Denver didn't have a fall off after getting rid of Carmelo Anthony. They received Raymond Felton, who was having an all-star type year there. They went and traded him, for Andre Miller, and Andre Miller's a fantastic point guard. They got Danilo Gallinari, who's a great player. They got Wilson Chandler in the deal. They got a lot of pieces in that deal.
You're right,
which
they
made
did.
Them, they didn't even have a fall. Denver had an almost identical. They were even better after the Carmelo trade, to tell you the truth.
At least for that half
they had
year,
a ton of depth. They had a ton of depth, and they went further in the playoffs. They took the Lakers to 7 games. What did the Knicks do? The Knicks were gone in 5.
Yep.
In the first round. Looking on it, the Knicks are loaded. With the star power with Amari and Carmelo, and look how good they did. And Tyson Chandler. The problem is, just because you have great players on a roster doesn't make your team will be great. They don't play well together, And if I were New York, I would explore doing a sign and trade to Brooklyn and getting Deron Williams for Carmelo Anthony, or trading Carmelo and Tyson Chandler down to Orlando for Dwight Howard, and then trying to sign Steve Nash. I just don't. James Dolan. The problem is James Dolan does not know how to run a basketball franchise. He hasn't done a good job at it in New York. They've been terrible for years, and even though they now have the star power, they're still a 500 team.
Well, let me ask you this. How is Evan Fournier going to fit coming in from France, the first international pick going to
I don't
Denver?
even know if I don't think he's going to play this year. He's going to be a player Denver stashes overseas for a year or two.
Okay.
Before, and I don't see maybe he can be a poor man's Ginobili. He doesn't have the Manu potential, but, he doesn't really, he's not good around the rim. He's not, he's not flashy or anything around the rim. That's what concerns me. I believe he played the Nike Hoop Summit a year ago, and in Portland, and he, I've been to the last 2 of those, and it's so much different. It's hard to get a read on these players at the Hoop Summit because you get a guy like Enes Kanter goes there, and Bismack Biyombo. Biyombo. I remember watching Bismack Biyombo, and I go, wow, this guy is going to be better than Ibaka. I remember when I watched him, this guy had 10 blocks. He was absolutely unbelievable in the Hoop Summit against Team USA. And then you go back a year later, you're just like, oh, you know what? Enes Kanter put up 40 points in that game too. It's so hard to get a read on that, and so you can't take much in the Hoop Summit. It doesn't mean as much as it should. I mean, it means more than it should probably.
Well, I'll tell you what, we have the top 20 picks kind of gone over, a nice overview with how they're going to mesh with their new team. We're going to take a quick station identification break here, and we're going to do 20 all the way and wrap up the first round. We are joined once again with NBA scout and Cleveland sports fan Zak Baris. You can find him on Twitter at ZBARIS. That's Z Baris. My name's Brian Engelman. I am the host of this show. This is the Unhappy Hour. It's where Cleveland sports fans get together and commiserate, maybe pour ourselves a tasty beverage and think about those beautiful, wonderful, amazing times that weren't ever. And we do this every week from 3:30 to 4:30 live each Friday Pacific time, except this is a special edition of the Unhappy Hour show for the NBA Draft. So if you're watching this on Twitter after the fact, if you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, click subscribe. We would appreciate that. And we're on Twitter at American_media_. So we'll be right back on the other side, wrapping up the first round of the NBA Draft in 2012. Those back-to-back picks with the Celtics had me thinking, because obviously I'm a Sullinger fan. So we'll talk with Zach on the other side. Thank you very much for listening.
Follow the newamericanmedia.com on Twitter at American_media_.